This is the Seahawkers podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Schultz, and I am joined by my good buddy, Adam Emmert. As Adam, we are reacting to the news from Wednesday about the Seahawks letting go longtime team favorite in Tyler Lockett. And then, not but minutes later, DK Metcalf requesting a trade from a report through Tom Pelissero and Ian Rappaport. And some other stuff's happened since then. Lots of news going on for our Seahawks. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. It was a tough day for Seahawks wide receivers yesterday, it sounds like. But let's definitely start with the Tyler stuff because, I mean, it's not that we didn't see this coming. I think we all knew this was going to happen, obviously. And, a sad day for an all-time great Seahawk. He's an all-time great in not just a legend on the field, but just a legend as a person in the community. And, as a Seahawks fan, just thank you, Tyler Lockett, for being you in everything that you've done for this organization. I've loved being a fan of you. It's been a treat, man.
Yeah, I have wanted to keep Tyler around. I think he can still play. I think he still wants to play. It sounds like it may be a lock that he is going to the Raiders next to go play for Pete Carroll down in Vegas. So that could make a lot of sense for him. Plus, it keeps him out of the division, which I would be happy about. Like I had enough of seeing Bobby Wagner in a Rams uniform for 1 year. I had enough of seeing Richard Sherman in a 49ers uniform. Like I want our legends to retire as just on the team. But if that can't happen, then I guess the next best thing is just not being in the NFC West. And if he can reunite with Pete Carroll, then I guess if he wants to keep playing, then that makes some sense. But jealously, I want Tyler back. Can he come back? Just come back, Tyler.
Yeah, he can come back. Like that's a legitimate option. Like people act like that's an impossibility. And I think especially with some of the DK news here, I mean, what's to say that they don't bring him back at a number that makes a lot more sense to where his production is right now? Like, how is that impossible?
It really depends on where you see this team going. And based on the DK Metcalf news, that might change your opinion on where you think the team might be going, because that's one of the questions that you and I talked about, Adam, as soon as this offseason kicked off. Is this a double down season, or is it a tear it down season? Or are they going to try and do something in the middle and not do one strong direction or another?
Yeah.
But it does feel like you should really take a stance in which direction you go. And with the Tyler Lockett, the news of his release, let's start off with the timing of that a little bit, because it was 10, 15 minutes after we heard about the Lockett cut that this report broke from Tom Pelissero about DK Metcalf requesting a trade, and that the Seahawks have agreed to explore options. So obviously the Seahawks had known about it before the Tyler release, to at least, I mean, Tom Pelissero, Ian Rappaport, two veteran journalists. So I think we can, put a lot of stock into this report. It means that the Seahawks and DK talked about it before this, and so maybe they saw this coming too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously all sides involved had to know that this was something that was coming, but look, I love DK as a whole. He's been fun to have on the team, all that stuff. But letting this leak out 15 minutes after Tyler is about to have his day in the sun, where we all celebrate Tyler Lockett inappropriately so, kind of fuck you. Like it really, it hurt my feelings. Like I'm angry about it. And because of that, I was kind of 50-50 on whether or not we should trade DK or keep him. There's a valid argument either way, I think. But after doing that, and then also too, I get really frustrated with the players that are under contract and are like, well, I want out. Well, cool. You're under contract, pal. It's a fine request, I guess, but it's just that it's a request. And, with you couple all that together, and it's just kind of like, fine, don't let the fucking door hit you on the ass. Like, get me an extra high pick, and let's invest in our trenches and build the backbone of this team, and not pay a guy who, look, he's a very good player. He's not top of the market money wide receiver player. Like, that's not who he is. He's close, but he's not there. And this is clearly him really just wanting top dollar. And I also do think with his personality, he wants to be in a bigger market. Like, I think DK enjoys being a star in front of the cameras.
Yeah, there's things to talk about there with regard to the compensation. I think the timing, like I can understand the emotional reaction with the timing because I thought about that too. Yeah, that's kind of messed up that you would come out with that right after. But then I I don't know how much of it was DK directing his agent and the media to release this 10 minutes after Tyler. And if it was, and he didn't like run it by Tyler just to at least give him a heads up, then I think he's a bad friend. But I also wonder if too, it's kind of business season in the NFL, right? And
Cool.
so if
Is business done on Thursday as well as Wednesday?
what I'm saying,
Yeah.
what I'm trying to get to is that if you tell your agent, yes, this offseason, I want a contract. And as DK Metcalf's agent, and I'm a really good agent, right? Like I've negotiated AJ Brown's contract. I've negotiated Debo Samuel's contract. If I'm the agent and I want to put the maximum amount of pressure on a team about paying my client, when would be the best time to apply that pressure? Like when would be the best time to say, to try and demonstrate how important DK Metcalf is to the Seattle Seahawks moving forward? And as an agent, I know that Tyler Lockett probably going to get released by the team. Like I could see the writing on the wall based on his contract amount. Like I know that's going to happen. So I line it up and I say, hey, when the Seahawks decide to make this news, as DK Metcalf's agent, as one trying to get him the best deal, I know when I'm going to release this news. I'm going to do it right after they make the Lockett announcement. It's going to make a big splash. Everybody's going to be talking about how much now, with Tyler Lockett being gone, JSN being the receiver in Seattle, what if they lose DK? Now this is the conversation, and this is what people are going to talk about.
Sure. Would that conversation be exactly the same if they would announce it today instead of yesterday?
It would be similar, but
It'd be exactly the same.
I said when is the best time, not when is an okay time.
No. We're talking
time?
like you're saying like the best peak best with no class is to do it on 15 minutes on Wednesday after Tyler Lockett is released. You're right. The next best time, that's like an A time instead of an A++ time, is on Thursday. Like this doesn't cost DK money to wait a day. It doesn't.
That's why I said if he didn't give Tyler a heads up, then he's a bad friend.
Well, my thing is
Tyler
the agent
understands that it's business and it's just DK wanting to get the maximum amount of money. What do I care?
He can do that by releasing this today. It's just such a classless move. And I don't think that, look, the reason why I don't think it's JS or John Schneider here, Nugash, is basically when a player requests a trade, it takes some of your leverage away as a GM, right? Because they want out now publicly. John Schneider would have rather kept that under wraps, had some negotiations behind the scene with other GMs, and help his negotiating leverage there. So I think it's unlikely that this came from the Seahawks, especially when they went out of their way to release a few players, a day or two ago. They wait and release Tyler on his own day. There's no way John Schneider is blowing that up.
No.
In top of giving away leverage. So this is DK's agent, and it may have happened without DK knowing. That's something that we can agree on. But if I'm DK today and I'm giving my agent a call, he's going to hear about it.
Yeah, because you would say, well, that's kind of messed up but I think I don't know. I feel like players should be relatively in charge of what their agents do. So, I'm not happy with the timing either. I think it's kind of messed up.
It's
I think it should
gross,
have been
dude.
coordinated, but I also I just hope he ran it by Tyler. That's all I'm saying.
I don't know that he did. Maybe he did. But either way, like one final diva act from DK. See you later, dude. Like they really did solidify it for me. Like
it may have solidified it for you.
Yeah.
But that's the one thing that I'm a little bit surprised by is that people are acting as if DK's already gone. And he has just requested a trade. He is still under contract for a year. He could still be franchise tagged the following year. So, if the Seahawks want to play hardball too, yeah, you play out your final year of the deal, then you hit the franchise tag. And I don't know if you are concerned about being the part of a Clint Kubiak offense that may run the football more, then after being 1 year of under contract and 1 year under the franchise tag, maybe that last year, maybe your value isn't as high. And so that's why I think that this really is, whether or not it's him really trying to get out, I think it's really about putting pressure on the organization saying that we want to get the deal done this year because we don't want to wait and see what it's like under a year, within a year of the Clint Kubiak offense to where his value may go down. Like you want to get the maximum amount of money right now. And for DK and his age being 27, this is probably going to be his last big contract. And so get it done now. And hopefully while the value is at its highest.
In terms of for DK and for the team, as far as getting him signed in-house for the next few years and getting that last big bag, because it is likely his last big bag. You're 100% right on that. This is the offseason that makes sense the most for everybody involved. So I don't know that you have to put a whole bunch more pressure on the organization for them to want to get it done this year. To me, this is a lot of, hey, I want to be paid CeeDee Lamb money, and you ain't CeeDee Lamb. Now, he's a number one for sure, and any number one receiver is worth at least a first. And well, I don't know. The comps are kind of all over the place, but a lot of people look at the AJ Brown trade. And I think that's what Iglet's going with here is, the first and the third they gave up for AJ Brown. He was younger then, at the beginning of his prime. DK's still in his prime, but closer to the end of it.
Right.
So to me, if I'm the Seahawks, you're right, man. Like this whining, like get me off the team and you're still on under contract. It's like, okay, look, we hold all the cards. You don't have much for leverage. You can either play this year under the deal that we have for you, or you can take a deal that's $28 million a year for a receiver. $30 million a year, not 35. Like, not only that, but I'm coming around more and more to the idea that you just don't pay receivers that kind of money unless they're a top 2 guy in the league. You just don't do it.
That's. I don't know if top 2 is where I start because it is really hard to find a guy. DK Metcalf has averaged over 1,000 yards per season for 6 straight seasons. It's not easy to find a guy who can average over 1,000 yards because you're asking a guy to stay healthy over the course of multiple years and for that production to be there. So I went back and I looked, how many guys really have matched that kind of production since he was drafted in 2019. And 2019 was kind of a crazy year. And maybe this is where you kind of got the idea that, you can just find a guy anywhere in the draft, maybe in the first 3 rounds, and they can be good because you had AJ Brown, who was drafted toward the back end of the 2nd round, pick 51. You had Terry McLaurin drafted in the 3rd round. And you had DK Metcalf. So you had all 3 of those guys drafted after the 51st pick where AJ Brown was. And all 3 of those guys have had that level of production, at least 1,000 yards on average over the last 6 years. 2020, that list gets a little shorter. It's Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb. Both guys, top guys. And those might be the 2 top guys in the NFL, right? Well,
yeah, you could argue that for sure. Yeah.
I don't know if I'd say CD is the top 2 wide receiver, but
he's easy top 5.
Yeah. And then guys who come close. I also threw in some of the guys who come close because I was like, oh, well, what's JSN's average over the last 2 years? And it's like 850 yards. And guys like T. Higgins and Michael Pittman, who were picked in the second round that year, they average out at least 850 a year for the last 5 years. So that was 2020. So you go to 2021. This one is a little bit longer list too, but it's all top 10 guys for the most part. You have Jamar Chase, who was picked number 5, Jalen Waddle, who was picked number 6, Devonta Smith, picked number 10, and then in the 4th round, Amon-Ra St. Brown. 22, now you're shortening the time period, so it's 1,000 yards over 3 years. You got Garrett Wilson, Drake London. In 23, it's just Puka Nacua. And then last year, Malik Neighbors, drafted 6th overall, Brian Thomas Jr., who was drafted 23, and Ladd McConkey, drafted number 34, so early in the second round. So you're taking that and saying, okay, say you get a first rounder for DK Metcalf.
Okay.
It might be toward
like mid first rounder or like a late one. What are you thinking?
Say mid to late. I don't think it's going to be early.
Okay.
I don't think the Patriots are giving up a top 10 pick for DK Metcalf, but
no,
if they do, then I'm all for it. But,
yeah.
but if you're looking toward the back end of the first round, you're essentially saying, out of the first 5-10 receivers, like you have to hit one. It's kind of like a 10% chance to get, because you average it out to about 2 guys per draft.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm thinking, 2 out of 10 guys, you're probably about 10-20% that you're going to hit on that wide receiver pick. And you brought up AJ Brown. The Titans did not hit on their wide receiver pick that they took in the first round.
It's not certain.
Burks.
You're right. No, you're 100%. It's not certain. But also, too, I find that list interesting. And kind of what you're saying is that you're going to get a guy that produces at that level. You're probably going to have to draft him relatively early. And, and this is why I'm kind of saying here, like, DK is a top 15 receiver, and that is worth a number 1 pick. I'm just saying he's not one of the top 5 guys.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty consistent. Now, the list that you brought up, obviously you have to draft him a little higher, at least league wide. That's the trend. Let's think about like the last 4 receivers the Seahawks drafted in the second round and up. Who would that be? That'd be DK, JSN, Tyler Lockett, and D. Eskridge.
Lockett was 3rd round.
Was he 3rd round? Okay.
Yeah.
I always forget on that one. Okay, there you go.
But
so there you go.
Second.
So those are your 4 highest drafted receivers in the last however many years, and they've hit on 3 out of the 4 of them.
Yeah. I'm kind of with Sam. If we were going to trade DK, I kind of want a future first more than a first this year, because that was my other question to you, because it is the idea of tear it down or double down.
Yeah.
Can you do both?
Yeah.
Can you move on from DK Metcalf and also double down on the season? And then if you were to, would you be okay with still doubling down on the season? Would it be the same doubling down on this 2025 season if you were to also take future compensation? Because let's say, I don't think that you're getting a first rounder for DK Metcalf, but based on some of the things that I've heard from like former GMs like Mike Mayock, there has to be, well, you have to, one, as a general manager, you then have to negotiate and pay DK Metcalf.
Yeah.
And so there also has to be other teams that are willing to fight to make that trade happen, to make that compensation go up.
Those teams exist. There's teams love paying wide receivers.
Would they do it before the draft? And that's why I'm also thinking that this could extend beyond this draft.
Oh, sure.
And then you could be looking then at a first rounder maybe next year, because, say a team that's right in it that maybe we're not thinking of as being wide receiver needy. Say Justin Jefferson has an offseason injury that in practice, and the Vikings, they're in go for it now mode, and they go, okay, well, we'll give up a first next year for DK.
Yeah, I think it could absolutely extend out. It could also get done quickly. the idea that you couldn't get a first for DK, I think is kind of folly. I do think the idea of you could get a first and then like a third or first and a second, like I don't think you're getting multiple picks. But I do think that there's some avenues to explore when you're trading him and I think the first that you would get would be a later round first, right? So, and that makes a lot more sense too, because most of the teams that are going to trade for a wide receiver, especially a good one, they're going to be a team that has a lot of the other pieces in place and think that they're a really good receiver away from taking their team to the next level. The number one trade partner that comes to mind to me that nobody's talking about, like, this would be the deal that I would explore immediately if I was John Schneider. Now, whether or not the Broncos would be interested in this is another thing. But I'd ask for the Broncos late first rounder and Zach Wilson. Done.
I think Zach Wilson's a free agent. Did they sign him for multiple years?
Oh, I thought he was still under contract this year.
I think the 4 years would be the end of his rookie deal, unless they signed him to a 2-year contract after he was let go.
I may be mistaken on that. Then I thought he was. I thought he had one more year with the Broncos under contract.
It was the Mac Jones year, so
yeah, exactly. But I'd be looking to trade him to the AFC too. But to answer your question, can you double down while trading DK Metcalf? The answer is absolutely yes. Number one, if I'm John Schneider, I don't trade DK Metcalf for less than a second, a highish second, and a quality player. Like one that somebody doesn't, think of as a premier position, but like trade him to the Raiders for, a high second in Michael Mayer. Like we could use another tight end. Like that would work. He gets to reconnect with Pete and all that stuff there. That's a lot for the sixth. Yeah, I don't know that I'm interested in that one, but
holiest hand grenade is in tear it down mode with this one. DK, Geno, K9, and Woolen to the Raiders for the 6th overall. I don't know what you end up getting with the 6th pick overall at that point, but
I don't know.
It would be at least capital that you could end up trading down with. The reason why the first rounder in 2026 is more appealing to me is that then you're getting into an area to where then you have that 2026 compensation. You end up with multiple first rounders. Then depending on where things finish out, maybe you can make that move to trade up for a quarterback in a draft that's more friendly for trading up for a quarterback. And Gary Blum mentioning, yes, the Zach Wilson is a free agent this year.
I was wrong on that.
He did have a club option for 2025, but the Broncos did decline that.
Okay, well, there you go. I just thought that maybe a trade like that would satisfy some of the QB for the future people. Look, I would prefer to trade him for a pick this year. And the reason is this is a draft that is loaded with offensive linemen. Like, can we finally fix that? Like once and for all? You're going to make a very average receiver look a lot better when your quarterback has time and the receiver has time to run routes. And I think you can be more productive as an offense overall, not paying a guy top tier money who's, the 15th, 14th, best receiver in the league. Like, I think you'd be way better off spending that money on the line, getting a good running game, protecting your quarterback, and having an efficient offense. Receivers are just so dependent on every single other thing around them working out. And so I'd rather have the pick this year and get a quality offensive lineman than worry about maybe drafting one of the maybe good QBs who maybe come out next year. Like that's just a lot,
Well, it's a lot too, thinking that you're going to draft an offensive lineman in the top 10 that's absolutely going to work out. Say if you're able to get a first round pick then and then move up to the top 10 or however it works. Expecting a first round pick to come in, because how many of those guys have we taken either at guard or at tackle over the years?
Yeah.
And they haven't worked out.
You're right. I'm ready to stop trying. I think we should just stop trying.
I'm not saying stop trying. I'm saying,
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you do what the Bears do and trade a 4th or a 5th rounder for Joe Thuney and try and fix the line that way. And apparently we weren't in on that. Well, maybe we were in on it, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, you can go the trade route and find veterans and things like that as well. No doubt about it. But look, if there's anywhere to spend your capital, it's in the trenches, man. And that's why, because I feel like so let's say you trade DK and you don't have to pay him. You're able to re-sign Geno. That's probably going to relieve you by, I don't know, 10 to 15 million on the cap for this upcoming season. Right there, you're going to get a little extra cap relief. It's going to put you around 50-ish million dollars total in available cap for this next year. Then you can go out and you can sign Will Fries from the Colts. And I was looking, the top paid guards last year, like their average cap hit in their first year, somewhere around 7 mil. Okay, well, so that leaves you, well, let's say we're working with 45 mil. Okay, because you got to leave some for the rookies, and you want to leave a little left over. Shoot, let's just say we're working with 40.
You got to sign Ernest Jones.
That's where I'm going next. So top linebackers, first year cap hits, at the top of the market, around $5 to $7 million. So let's say we're up to about 15 mil. And I'm rounding up, right? So now you still got, what would that leave you? That'd be $25 million left to spend. And you've re-signed Ernest Jones. You've re-signed Geno Smith. You went out and got one of the top guards. And now you can go out and get Chris Godwin for 2 years at like about 20 million a year. That's about where he's at. And I'm not saying he's DK Metcalf and he's going to replace everything that DK Metcalf does, but you're switching to JSN being your number one if you're trading. That's what you're doing. And you expect him to be a number one type receiver if you drafted him in the first round. So might as well make that transition. I'm not super comfortable with JSN as the number one. I do think that he was feasting a lot off of the attention that DK got.
Right.
But that's a way that you still double down while quote unquote tearing it down by not overpaying a receiver.
We've got Ryan 911, our live executive producer, coming in with a $9.99 super chat saying go Hawks, Ryan. We've got AZ Hawker saying the Sierra Nevada is getting to Adam's head. Holy Hand Grenade brought up something that I was curious, and it sounds like you're on the idea of still keeping Geno Smith, but Holy Hand Grenade saying, do you see any reason to keep Geno if DK does leave? Because the Williams restructure kind of meant we're going for it.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of meant we're going for it, but at the same time, if Geno wants a huge contract, if DK wants a huge contract, and you decide that you can't do both, then you're going to have to start making some decisions as to which one you do move on from. If you're doubling down, I think you can't double down without Geno. Because
100%.
You're not going to find a quarterback to play in 2025 that gives you as good of an option, or at least makes you as competitive as having Geno Smith.
True.
So that then leaves you to, and my thought is that, well, shoot, if you're moving on from DK Metcalf, Geno Smith, is he going to look as good? Like, if you're a Geno Smith hater and you don't like him with DK Metcalf, you're really not going to like him when he's just throwing to JSN and he doesn't have Tyler anymore and he doesn't have DK. And okay, maybe you bring in a Chris Godwin level player, but it's definitely not going to look the same.
It's going to look better. It's going to look better. You're dead wrong on this one. Look, because if you're not wrong on this one, if you're not paying DK, then you're paying offensive linemen and you're actually making an investment there. You'll have a running game that actually works with a new offensive coordinator, and you pair a quarterback with a good offensive line and a good quarterback like Geno Smith with a good offensive line and a good running game. He's going to look better with that, with Chris Godwin or Devontae Adams or, whoever the hell else you want to throw out there with JSN. He's going to look better with that combination than a piss poor offensive line, no running game in DK Metcalf.
You have so much more faith in John Schneider being able to fix this offensive line in one off season than I do. And so if that's your position, that you think that John Schneider can absolutely fix the offensive line while getting rid of DK Metcalf and being able to protect Geno Smith, and then also going out to find a replacement wide receiver that can somewhat replace the level of production and attention from the defense that DK Metcalf provides, then I'm not in that boat with you. because I don't think that offense. I think it's more likely that Geno Smith
basically your argument is offensive line. Throw your hands up. We can't fix it.
I'm not.
We
I'm
can't.
Not saying
So
throw your
let's
hands up.
try.
I'm not
why not
saying
try?
throw your hands up. I'm saying
Okay.
that there's a bigger margin for error if you have DK Metcalf, JSN, and also try and address the offensive line than if you get rid of DK Metcalf. I think that it does increase that margin of error that, hey, if you go out and you try and address the offensive line, and we mentioned it in the last show, like there's a lot of questions about guys on the offensive line. Like Will Fry, sure. Can he be a good guard? There's also some injury questions. A lot of the guys that we brought up at guard all have injury questions.
He one time broke his tibula. You're right. And he did it early in the season and is likely ready to go. So, yeah. It's not like he tore up his knee or, had an Achilles. It's a broken bone.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, and if they also have to sign the guy. Like DK Metcalf's already here.
Look, this is what I'm saying. So maybe I should make this clear. I'm not a fan of just trading DK Metcalf and then squandering the assets. Like if you don't go out and make a real move after trading DK to address some of the big problems that your team has, then it's a fail all the way around. So you have to at least do it.
You have to try and succeed. And
right. And if John doesn't do that, then now we're talking fireable offense. Because then you should have just kept DK, and then you would be right.
And that's the other point that I wanted to bring up too. If you're John Schneider, do you want to take that big of a risk? Like, are you willing to put it all on the line this season? You trade DK Metcalf, you sign Geno Smith to an extension because that gives you the best option for cap flexibility to make the moves to then go address the offensive line. If you're John Schneider and you bring in the dudes then to address the offensive line, it doesn't happen, and your team goes 6-11, 7-10 under Geno Smith again, you get worse.
Yeah.
Then this might be my last year GMing the Seahawks. And that's why I go back to the margin of error thing. I think the margin of error is a little bit greater if you keep DK Metcalf.
So if we're talking about John's job security, is his margin of error bigger or smaller if he continues to fail at fixing the offensive line in comparison to trading or not trading DK Metcalf?
Repeat that again.
What I'm getting at is I think he's more likely to be fired if he keeps failing at this offensive line thing than he is whatever repercussions come from trading or not trading DK Metcalf.
I don't know if I agree with that completely, because I think if you go out there with a competent enough offense to where you still perform at the level like you did last year, you get 10 wins.
That's not competent.
It's if you get in the playoffs next year, if you make the playoffs, and I think that based on the level of competition in the division with the 49ers semi retooling, we'll see how much of a team they put together. If Brandon Ayuk's returning healthy, what they do with Brock Purdy. Like, there's a lot of questions around the Niners. The Rams, they're probably still the team to beat in the division because that's where the level of competition that they've been at over the last few years consistently. I think that's the team to beat, and if you can get by them, then I think that as a general manager, you're probably end up being okay then next offseason.
Maybe, but if you just one and done again, I'm in the offensive line gets bulldozed in the playoff game. It's a bad look. It's a bad look, and the fans will be furious. If you sneak into the playoffs at 10 wins and your offensive line gets dump truck, and you get blown out by 20 points, especially if you end up playing a division rival. Like, yeah, I would say that's a bad day for John Schneider.
James Stradley in the chat saying he's not one of the best route runners. He doesn't have the best hands, and he will give up on plays at times. Go Hawks. Talking about DK Metcalf. Oh, let's address these one by one.
Okay.
Not one of the best route runners. Okay, he's not top 5, but his route running has improved significantly from his first year until this past year. And I would say I don't know if JSN's route running is significantly better than DK Metcalf's. Like I think
That's the narrative.
I think DK got that narrative based on his route running early on, and he's kind of had to overcome it since.
Oh,
And
I was saying more. JSN is very much hyped as being a super savvy route runner.
and I don't know if I see it necessarily as being super savvy. He's not one of the top 5 guys either.
I agree. I'm just saying what
Okay.
you know what the narrative has been around him. Yeah.
So yeah, if you look at and there's sites that break it down in terms of route running, and DK Metcalf is not among the worst in terms of route running. He's just not. So best hands. Okay, DK Metcalf, yeah, he drops some balls that come his ways, but every wide receiver drops a few passes here and there. Like I think he gets compared to Tyler Lockett, who has some of the best hands because he plays on the same team as Tyler Lockett. But I've also seen with this Green Bay news, I see that the Seahawks, if they trade to Green Bay, they're getting back Romeo Doubs or Dontarian Wicks. And if you look at those guys, the other thing was trade with the Chargers and get Quentin Johnson. Have you seen those hands on any of those 3 guys? Like Romeo Doubs doesn't have nearly as many passes thrown his way. He drops 9% of the passes that go his direction, and he doesn't have the volume that DK does. Wicks, it's over 10%, and DK Metcalf is down below 5. So, and Quentin Johnson probably in that same area as Romeo Doubs. So don't give me this nonsense about, we could just trade DK and get Quentin Johnson or Romeo Doubs. Those guys drop twice as many passes as DK, and they get half the volume.
Oh, I agree. I think his bad hands is a little overstated. Like, let's say this. Okay, route running. He's what? A 7, an 8 out of 10. 6
route running.
Yeah. Where would you put that?
7, 8. Yeah.
Okay, let's say 7. Okay. Hands. About a 7.
Sure.
Speed. 10.
10.
Physicality. 10. Like blocker. He's a 10 for a wide receiver.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you look at the full package, I mean, that's what makes him a number 1. And also, too, the league shows you that they view him as a number 1 with the way that they rotate coverage to him and put so much attention on him. He can wreck a game here and there. Like, he can. He's just not quite as scary as, like, the top 5 dudes. And that's why I can't get on board paying a guy that's not a top 5 player at his position, top 5 money at a position that's wildly overpaid.
I think one of the reasons why it's overpaid goes back to that list of names that I mentioned about a half hour ago. Like there's 2 guys per year that average consistently 1,000+ yards per season. And so when guys like that come up to be paid, they're paid among the top guys in the NFL. And I don't know if it's top with wide receivers. I don't know if it's top 5. It might go to top 15. And
yeah. Can you just run through those names really quick again? Just boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. A.J. Brown, Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, Amon-Ra, Chase, Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Puka. Then the guys from last year.
Okay. And the only reason I want to hear it again, because I was like, well, how many of these guys are contributing to teams that are making deep playoff runs? And it sounds like about half. Like, I mean, you think about this year, Puka, Terry, AJ Brown.
I mean, it's everybody but the Cowboys and Dolphins.
Yeah.
So, and Drake with the Falcons and Garrett Wilson with the Jets, but they're also on rookie deals. They're on the first deal still.
Yeah. Well, it's just tough. And the reason why I'm even less inclined to pay him is I really do think the league is shifting. And I think Mike McDonald wants to shift. I don't know that airing it out downfield all the time is where Mike wants to be playing ball.
If you go the Eagles route, though, they're paying A.J. Brown. They're paying Devonta Smith. They're paying their running back.
Mm-hmm.
Like they found ways to pay
and they're paying their offensive line.
And they're paying their offensive line. So, yeah. Sam Gilbert in the chat saying, does DK want to go to a contender or a team that would pay him $30 million? The opposite of a contender. I'm not liking the competitiveness, but I hope Carolina does it. I think DK would, if you were to ask him, do you want to go to a contender or a team that would pay him 30? He'd say, I want both. I want to go to a contender that pays me $30 million a year. Like that would be the optimal. So when I saw that other post that somebody said that, well, DK wants to play for a contender.
Yeah.
Duh. Of course he does.
Oh, so my reaction to that one was, that's cute. You'll go wherever the best deal is. But thanks for the insight. Appreciate it, man.
Hey, if the contender gives you the best deal, then that's where you go.
Yeah. Well, sure, but it's probably unlikely.
Yeah. I was looking at some of the odds makers on where they think DK Metcalf ends up in the 2025 season. Do you want to know who was the odds-on favorite to land DK Metcalf next year?
Jeez. Chargers?
The Seattle Seahawks.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a 50-50 chance that he stays still at this point. Like, because, yeah, as you aptly pointed out early in the pod, like, there's no impetus for the Seahawks to do it. Oh, no, you're going to come to camp and be happy, unhappy? Well, boo freaking who? I'll tell you what, the gang operator at the sawmill, they don't give a crap whether or not he's happy or not. You come in and you do your job. Like, that's what you do.
I mean, you could pull Joey Galloway, right, and decide to sit out most of the season and then come in toward the end. It's real expensive. It got more expensive than when Joey did it back in the 90s. The Snail saying, do the Texans need a wide receiver? Christian Kirk, they just traded a 7th round pick for Christian Kirk today. So, yeah.
Wow. Why teams still see value on that dude? I'll never know.
They got Nico Collins. They got, well, is Tank Dell hurt? They've got a good receiving crew. I don't think that they're going to be.
And was Diggs on a 1-year deal?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
So terrible. The sawmill analogy is terrible.
I don't know. Well, then pick an industry. I'm just saying, like, look, the insurance industry, like, they don't give a crap if you come into work happy or sad. Like, you're just expected to do your job. Same with DK Metcalf. Show up.
I think it's a little bit different, I guess, when you're the top 15 person in your industry and there's demand from, I don't know. It's hard to make a comparison outside of football because there's nothing like football out there that the people do that you can really make the point. Because if I work in another industry and somebody wants to pay me more money, I can just quit my job and then go work for that the other company.
Unless you're a contract worker.
Or unless you have a non-compete clause or something like that where you...
Whatever. It doesn't matter. My point being is how much these guys are coddled and we worry about how they're feeling about stuff. Like, come on, man.
Yeah. So, well, that's a look at DK. I think that hit on a lot of the talking points that I had at least wanted to cover with you, Adam. I just want to say, a lot of people talking about DK Metcalf like he's already gone, and I'm saying I don't think John Schneider moves on from DK unless he gets the type of deal that compensates the team appropriately. It's like we do this every offseason. We did it every offseason with Richard Sherman. Richard, the demand for Richard Sherman, is this the year that he's going to be traded? A lot of teams want him. And then it was with Russ, and now it's with DK Metcalf. So,
well, the only thing that gives me pause about it is, would this be the most value that you would be able to get out of DK this offseason? Considering, because let's say the Kubiak thing is more run the football, and that's where Mike wants to go, and your targets are diminished and all that, and you're coming to the end of the year on this contract, and you're going to have to franchise him. Like, does that make him less valuable? Is this when you would be the most valuable?
It's tough because generally something that would increase his value in a trade market would be that if he were under contract a little bit longer and the team didn't have to negotiate a deal. So say the Seahawks make a deal for DK, he's under contract for multiple years. They've paid his salary, his signing bonus, which is a big part of the salary. Then when you make the trade, the team that receives him only has to pay him the base salary rather than the signing bonuses. Seahawks would keep all that signing bonus money as dead money, and then the other team would get a relative deal on the base salary side. So that I think would increase DK's value if then he were to be up for it.
Interesting. Okay. Because sign and trade kind of thing. That's more of an NBA thing than you see in the NFL. But
it is, but it could also be a situation to where you sign DK Metcalf fully intending to keep him around, and then the trade deadline rolls around, and it's the middle of the year next year. Maybe somebody got hurt. The team isn't going to be able to make a playoff run. A team that needs a wide receiver is willing to give up a lot for DK at that point. Then that's why I'm saying he could be worth more at that point than he is right now.
Possibly. Yeah. But we're near the peak. I think we can agree on that in terms of value. I'd say, coming into the last couple of days, I was 50-50 on trade or keep DK. I've said it multiple times. I think now I'm more like 70-30. Go ahead and trade him. Just pisses me off.
SM Vegas 83 saying, yeah, John Schneider does his radio show in Seattle on Thursday and said if a deal's going to happen, it needs to happen before this draft. I think a general manager would want to say that, because if you're him, you want that draft capital then to spend in this year's draft, or you have that draft capital to then push it toward next year, but you have it in hand. And if you're him, you absolutely want to get it done before the draft.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, that seems to make the most sense. Some of this stuff gets all convoluted too with how things count and against the cap. And
maybe John's just a big liar, like the snail saying in chat.
It is lying season, boys and girls. It is.
Yeah. So really want to thank everybody who came in to the chat today, tuned into the show, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. And a big thanks again to Ryan911 for executive producing this episode.
Heck yeah, man. Appreciate all you guys. And just watching the comments kind of scroll by, and just it feels as if I think everybody in the land of the 12s all have a huge varying degree of feelings about this. And it's all over the map. This isn't even close to a consensus thing.
It's not. No. And I think emotions play a big part of it too. Like I think if you weren't upset when you saw that news, especially coming right off the heels of Tyler Lockett's announcement that he was cut. Like, I think a lot of us wanted to reserve an entire day to process those feelings of Tyler Lockett being his last day in the Seahawks uniform.
Maybe.
And the DK news, it stole that from many of us. And so, yeah, if you were angry about that, then I don't know what's going on in your fandom.
Well, look, I was seeing out there that like the projected Tyler salary, like to be picked up as a free agent, is about $8 million. You trade DK, you could bring in like, one of the other more top end free agent wide receivers and still bring in Tyler Lockett at $8 million. You could do that. It could not be the end for Tyler Lockett. That is a possibility, and end up with a free agent guard that's good. Have a crack at a couple of them high in the draft. You fix everything, and you don't have any more pacifier divas. Like, I'm just saying.
And the offensive line gets magically fixed, and Geno has
it's
all the time in the world.
It's not magic to sign one of the top guards and then spend your draft capital on top prospects. That's not magic. That's how it's done, son.
And I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.